In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to change the amount of resources a player has, the population cap of a player, and the camera height using SCAR. Now, SCAR, as I've mentioned in another tutorial, is just an acronym for Scripting at Relic, which is essentially just Lua. So in this tutorial, I'm not going to teach you how to program in Lua, so I'm assuming you already have some programming experience. But if you know Lua or you're willing to look up some tutorials on Lua, it's fairly straightforward. And so I'm currently hosting an official SCAR documentation on my website. It's not the most recent. I believe there's another one in the works, but it's good as of April this year. So you can just go to fortresseuropemod.com/scardoc and the rest will fill in automatically. So in this case, we're going to, I already know most of these functions, but I'd like to show you how you can search to find functions you might need. So you find a category, so let's say player, and we're going to look for player set resource. So this is the function you would use to change the resources of a player. As you can see, you would have to give it an argument of player, the resource type, which is RT underscore, and then whatever the resource type is, so munition, fuel, whatever, and then the float amount. So that would just be, let's say, 9,000 or something like that, or 9,001, if you will. And then I have a SCAR file here. This is the same one I've provided in my win condition pack tutorial. This is just a default win condition script that is generated by the wizard when you create a win condition pack. So if you were to edit that file, you would go down to where it says win condition init. So that's just initializing some things for the win condition. And you can see that there's a function call here, scar add init. So normally scripts are loaded at in a certain order, and so any functions or variables that aren't added to SCAR will run well before the map or the mod or whatever is loaded. So you want to have your functions loaded by scar add init. So this is already done in this case, since this is the default win condition. But we're going to add some code here. So let's say we want to give all players a certain amount of resources. So this is just essentially looping through all the players, all the known players, putting the current player into a variable, and then we're going to set that player's resource. Let's say munition to over 9,000. You could skip a step here and take this part and just replace it with player if this was all you were going to do. It's just a little shortcut. But if you're going to use it in multiple function calls, you'd want to keep it in the variable just to make things nice and tidy later on. So another thing we could do is we could set the popcap override for that player to something like 500. So now that player will also have 500 pop, which is pretty crazy. Now for the camera height, you don't actually need to do that on a per player basis. It's actually global. So we could do some function calls here below. Now this function, you can find it here, camera set tuning value. For those of you that are familiar with the camera.lua file in COH1 and last year during the exploit era, the camera Lua editing, this is almost identical to the camera.lua file. And so you give it a tuning value and then a value associated with that tuning value. And you can find these by scrolling down to enums, and it's right here, camera tuning value. So you click there and you can see all the different tuning values you can give to that function. And you'll notice that a lot of these are exactly the same as you would find in camera.lua. So pretty much everything you could do in camera.lua, you can do in SCAR. So in this case, we're going to change the minimum distance. Actually, that's more or less keeping it the same. And then we're going to change the max to something like 75. Might be a bit too high due to some rendering issues at higher heights, but you can play around with it and find a value you like. So these are just the defaults though. So we're going to want to tell the game to start at that height. And you can put these in variables too if you wanted something like 75 and then change these to that variable. And that's pretty much it. So now it would loop through all the players. It would add, or set rather. So this is set. There is an actual add resource function, but that's different. So it sets the player's resource to over 9,000, regardless of what they had before. And then it also overrides their population cap, so now it will be at 500. And then in addition to that, you increase the height to 75. And that's pretty much all I have for this brief tutorial on SCAR.